I want you to imagine a forest path. Now, this path is pretty beautiful, in all honesty. The sun reflects off its golden bricks. There's plants on either side. Pretty flowers, cool looking animals. And some of these plants are so nice that they're kind of distracting. And some of those animals are so cool that you can't help but stop walking down this path and you stare at them for a bit, just to see what they're all about, what they're up to. You can want to sniff the pretty flowers or check out how the plants feel, stuff like that. There are side paths that have even more of these distractions. They lead pretty far away from this main golden path that you're wandering around. They have their own collections of their own distractions, lots of their own plants and animals to see and get distracted by. But luckily, there's nothing really harmful about them. Like, sure, they can lead you pretty far away from the path you're on, but you still end up finding your way back. So, you don't really think much about wandering down these paths, and you carry on in your endless journey down this golden path. Now, as you're walking down this golden path, you can't help but notice a pretty strong, but pretty pleasant smell. It kind of reminds you of the flowers you saw earlier. You really liked those flowers, and you kind of miss smelling them. So, you embark, and it seems to be coming from this new side path that's a bit different from the others. This one has a walkway, sure, and the scent seems to be coming from it, but what you don't notice is the path is covered in thorny bushes, and since you're so encapsulated by this super strong scent, you walk down the path. Your legs start getting pricked. You don't notice. You have to get to that scent. You keep going. Your legs keep getting pricked. And eventually, you get further and further onto that path. The golden path is pretty far away at this point, but you haven't really looked back yet. After all, like, the scent's not back there, so why look? So, you keep going. Your legs just keep getting bruised, more and more. You can't help but notice all those little pricks and bruises really begin to start overpowering that scent, which you also can't help but notice is kind of fading at this point. You keep going. Maybe it's just fading away for a bit. Has to be around here somewhere. Your legs just keep getting beaten and bruised. And finally, that scent fades, and all of the pricks from the thorns start settling in. And you decide to look back, and that golden path, the shine is there, but you're pretty far away from it. Now, because you walk so far across this thorny path, it's pretty hard to walk, and you're gonna have to get back on that path at some point. But since your legs are so beaten and bruised, and you have this giant path of thorns in your way, it's going to be pretty tough. Good luck getting back. Yeah, it's kind of a silly story, but it's kind of a philosophy I've come up with to try and, like, put into words what I've learned about, like, presence and letting the mind wander to a point that's not harmful. Now, as you probably guessed, that golden path represents, well, presence and staying on this, just looking at what's right in front of you instead of all the pretty plants on the side, which are those little thoughts throughout the day that kind of pull us away from that place. And all those little side paths are those really interesting side thoughts that make you start daydreaming. Those flowers and those scents are kind of like nice memories of the past. And it's nice to go down that way sometimes. There's nothing wrong with reminiscing. But sometimes when you try to chase sense like that, feel feelings you want to feel again, you can get caught in one of those thorny paths. You don't notice until you are mentally beaten, bruised by your own mind. And by the time you realize what's going on, you're gonna be in a pretty bad spot. And that brings me to my point of the overall importance of staying present and not getting pulled into the grasp that those types of thoughts can have on you. And apparently it's kind of our default state to just want to go down these thought rabbit holes that can leave us pretty sad. But we also have the ability to fight that. And yes, it can be hard. I understand that. But some people just don't know, or they haven't tried, or they've already given up. And that can lead to a lot of resentment. Which is why I'm so glad I kind of thought of this whole mindset when I did. Because if I try to just hang on to these different thorns in my heart, all these different emotions I try to chase, I'd be living a life of just being desperate to feel something I can't really feel anymore. Because let's be honest, when you, even if you do accomplish that feeling of, well, feeling that feeling, it's kind of a shaky foundation, because you're going to fight tooth and nail to try and make sure you don't lose that feeling again, instead of just accepting that maybe you don't have to feel what you want all the time. Just accepting things as they are instead of trying to get something back. I say an example of this is trying to get back with an ex, or trying to find a partner, just so you don't feel the emotion of loneliness, instead of, well, addressing why you don't like being lonely. Instead of conquering that part of yourself, you try to hide it from yourself. Try to stop yourself from feeling it. And some people can build their life around these kind of emotional thorns, instead of just pulling it out on the spot. I know I'm kind of speaking Japanese at the moment, but my overall point is that you get so caught up in these negative daydreams of wishing you had things that you kind of dig yourself into this big hole, instead of just taking life for what it is. For example, these circumstances are pretty bad, but so you don't think yourself into a corner, you kind of have to understand that these are your circumstances, and the present is, well, the present. You can't really morph reality to your own will, unfortunately. So it's kind of out of nowhere, but I think my goal today is get to the ocean. I kind of understand that this viewpoint of mine is somewhat privileged, because a lot of problems are worldly, and you can't just think them away. Or, oh, just focus on the present, bro. Like, some people have things, don't have things that I could never imagine. Like, some people don't really have supportive parents, or they live in pretty good war zones, and those you can't just live in the present, because in fact, like, thinking about your present circumstances can make you feel pretty bad. I believe that just acknowledging that the situation you're in is real, and that you can, and not just, instead of just cursing at the sky, waiting for the clouds to go away, you kind of help yourself stay out of this kind of state where you just wish your life was different. Also, I almost got distracted going to that cave. The whole analogy about, like, staring at the clouds, cursing at them, it's just, you just kind of put yourself into this helpless situation where you're powerless to feel anything other than sadness. And this is something I've been told before. With that mindset, you could just think you're giving yourself constant platitudes and kind of just hiding yourself from, like, the reality that it sucks. And I believe it's quite the opposite, because in most scenarios, just being upset at your circumstances and accepting them is you're acknowledging them in both situations, but just staying grounded, and you're handling the situation in a much more healthy way. From my perspective, of course. That's the thing with these videos in general. Anything I say is just what I've learned from my perspective, because topics like this, there's a lot of nuance, and hope I can get that across. Like, for my circumstances, and hopefully for some of you watching, it can apply, but I don't want to just neglect the people who genuinely do live in terrible conditions. Oh boy, the corruption. You know, I could try to go down and get a musket. I have bombs. I can make a hammer and I'll probably. No, we ball. I'm going down. Apparently not here. Down here? Nope, of course not. Definitely down here. This is further inland, come on. I think we have our winner. About the whole analogy with thorns, that kind of ties into the whole idea of failure. You could have this emotional thorn, quote unquote, of, for example, like social anxiety. Like you're always afraid that you're gonna do something embarrassing. So whenever a situation comes up that requires you to like flex that muscle, that thorn starts swelling and you hurt. The alternative is ignoring those thoughts, or at least attempting to. Just kind of putting them in the back of your head, or just focusing your attention on what's going on right in front of you physically. And you can kind of bite the bullet, and that's kind of a way to overcome that fear without really thinking about it. Well, you are thinking about it, but just kind of telling that fear and that thorn to shut up. And that's what's meant by like pulling out that thorn. Instead of picking at it and just trying to prevent things from touching it, you are actively like pulling at it, making progress on getting it out of your heart. And that's progress. Also nice musket. You'd love to see it. Never mind, it's awkward. But that's an example of what I'm talking about. Well, yeah, this musket kinda sucks, but there's plenty more orbs around here. I can make do with what I have for now, and I'll even come out with even more ammo, so there's probably like way more examples out there. Like, if we're using like more game terminology, if you like lose like 20 games in a row if you're playing some like competitive rank game, sure, that's pretty awful, but that's the thing, it's a game. You could just log off, and those 20 losses, like, at least one thing happened in one of those games that at least helped you be better at something. Vilethorn? Interesting. Okay, this musket is actually still really good, shoot. I'm trying to think of a real life example. Like, going back to the relationship thing, you could feel really lonely. You could miss your ex and all the feelings she gave you. Like feelings of love or care. A mutual feeling of that, and dude. I'd rather not die. Okay, so as I barricade myself, you could try to get into another relationship with another girl to try and bury that feeling of loneliness and kind of fill that hole in your heart. Like, doing that is like the equivalent of filling your heart with like, I don't know, concrete instead of like organic liquid. But my point is instead of addressing the feeling itself, you are doing things to hide that feeling instead of figuring out why you're hurting so bad over being lonely. I've lost a couple relationships that meant a lot to me. Yes, it hurts a lot to think about like what could have been and like what I'm missing out on. But ultimately, I'm not sad or depressed, at least not anymore, because I tried my best in these friendships, and ultimately I have some good memories that person has good memories. Nobody got hurt, and that's reality. And not whatever my mind's trying to tell me about how this is the worst thing that could have happened, or anything like that. Just avoiding the melodrama. Maybe this could work. Oh yes, that's so satisfying. That's another point. Your mind absolutely loves to create melodrama out of almost any conceivable thing. You could just say hi to someone, and maybe they don't say hi back, or just kind of look at you funny, and then go back to what they're doing. And then you could come up with all these stories in your head about like how they hate you, or how you're so weird for just talking to people for no reason, when it's literally just like one human being, one person, who could have anything going on, just not saying hi back. And it's kind of been something I've been trying to beat too, about like socializing and just life in general. Your head can blow things up into things that just aren't true. And that's what leads to things like anxiety, or worse. It's kind of what self-fulfilling prophecies are. You worry about something so much that it could become real in a way. You think of, like, you could be close call. Could be thinking of like being where you're being too weird, and this girl like won't talk to you. So you start worrying about this as you're talking to that girl, so you're all like jumpy and stuff around her, which kind of can be alienating, which does lead to her not talking to you, which can feed into like that whole narrative you're making in your head about how, oh, you were right, this way of thinking must be correct, and then the cycle begins anew. Screw you. Okay, I'm flying way too close to the sun right now. No water bolt. Can't believe it. Not even a single bookshelf. Look at this. Dude. To summarize, all of these thought traps can be avoided, or at least you can make an effort to avoid them, because I admit it's pretty hard to just be like a total monk and just not worry about anything at all, because we're human and that's natural and healthy even, because it just gives our minds something to do. Anyway, all of these things can be avoided by focusing on what's actually happening. Like, when you're actually out experiencing everything you're doing, like, I don't know, actually like feeling the soles of your shoes, like, contacting your feet, the feelings you get from anything you do, like eating, just the urge you get to consume your food, or the fact that just everything looks so different from each other. Like, I don't know, compare like the material of your bed to the smell of your water or something. Like, no two things are the exact same. With that thought process, you're kind of pulled away from all these different emotional thorns and side paths and all these different thought traps that in the end just hurt you in a way. And that's the whole point of being present. That's why it's so advocated for by so many people who are like on self-improvement. Because, as I've just said, it pulls you away from like all these different things that make you like unmotivated or sad or angry, anything like that. It's just avoiding the pull of those specific strong energies can do so much for you. And all you have to do is just actually look at what you're doing. Like, even if you're just like scrolling on your phone, you're actually like processing each video you're watching or each post you're looking at. Like, instead of just like following whatever your monkey brain is saying, you kind of just realize that you have the power to kind of watch everything you're feeling instead of being the sum of what you're feeling. This kind of like leads into what I've learned about like who I am in terms of like consciousness. Like, I am not my emotions, I'm the one watching my emotions, but I'd say that's a different topic. And look at that. The ocean. You know what? Perish. Oh, yeah. Along with just not being distracted by it, all these silly thoughts your silly brain comes up with, like, every day kind of becomes more fun in a way because you're actually like having more fulfilling conversations, you're having more fulfilling experiences overall. Like with the realization that everything is just so different, or like there's just so many things to see that you really haven't noticed before since you're like in your own head. Every day is kind of just completely new. You could say like maybe you're missing out on thinking of like coming up with something important because you're not thinking of like different scenarios, but here's the thing. There's a time and place for daydreaming, but it's not when you're out and about with all these cool things around you. You could be taking a walk and there's all these cool trees and like birds chirping and the birds themselves, so instead of like listening to their songs and appreciating how cool trees are, you're in your own head worrying about like some weird thing you said to someone, quote unquote weird, because there's that bias too. Mine could just label things as weird and you could run a mile with that. I might talk about that in another video because that's something that's especially addicting. Just acknowledging the melodrama of your mind instead of just casting it to the side and knowing that no, these things just aren't true. I kind of wonder what I'm gonna do building here. Like I want to set something up here that's not just like a box, but yeah, honestly I don't really know what else to add. Overall, just be present and know that you are not your thoughts or your emotions, and a lot of the things your mind comes up with is just not really relevant to your actual day, which is what you should be paying attention to. So maybe we can just go back to that story about the forest path. You can just stay on that golden path and you can notice when you're smelling that scent instead of just going straight to it, aka trying to catch that high of wanting to feel the things you feel again. Without realizing this, you're going to get yourself stuck on a lot of things that probably won't affect you in quite a few years unless it's like a super important life decision like choosing a college or like something like that, because that's a completely different animal. But my overall point is just don't worry so much. You're fine. I believe in you. And that there's so much more to see out there than there is in your own head. Just stay on that golden path. You will thank yourself. This fence looks kind of weird. That is a really weird looking umbrella. Cactus or palm? Cactus or palm? Green's a nice color. Sure. You know what? Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. But as I finish this hut, and as the night falls, just try to remember, be present. Your mind is not the ruler of everything. Stay on that golden path. You do not want to get covered in thorns. In the case that you do, don't build your life around them. Thanks for hearing me out, and I will see you later.